in this audience because one of their favorite cultural icons meets that description. But it's that. And somebody mentioned, well, you know, it also looks like these musicians, ZZ Top, they could all be stunt doubles. But for my students, Johannes Brahms was about as real to them as Santa Claus. So I took a different approach, and I found a picture of him when he was college age, and I talked about how he was so under the overwhelming shadow of Beethoven. How could he do anything? How could Brahms do anything different? Beethoven had already figured out everything there was to do about music. I talk about how he was in love with his best friend's wife, how his best friend tried to commit suicide. And I try to make him more real so that then the students can maybe say, oh, well, he's more real, he's not just a bearded old fat white guy like Santa Claus. So I wondered one day, though recently, I thought, if students are not particularly interested in my course, I always thought it was just my course, they're only not interested in my course, what about college? And I started talking to them, and I started thinking about, why did I go to college? And I thought, well, I went to college to become educated because my family put a strong value on being an educated person. You want to grow up to be an educated person. Well, today, there are incredible and increasing ways for students who want to become educated outside of an academic environment. Why go to college? Well, I wanted to get a good career. Well, students know that getting a college degree does not automatically mean that they're going to get a good career. In the United States, 44% of graduates 25 and up are underemployed. Why go to college? To become financially secure. Well, I don't know about here, but in the United States, the average debt is $27,000, and these are unforgivable debts. So students know when they're done with college, many of them have a crippling financial debt to pay back. Why go to college? To learn. Well, some people learn better outside of a classroom than within it. There was a new book that came out a few years ago, and it had the provocative title of Chucking College, Achieving Success Without Corruption. And this is what she says: don't go to college. You lose the vital years of your life, and you'll never be able to regain them. So, moving from theory to practice, as you look at your own context, particularly those of you who are faculty, how do you help students find the value in what they're learning? And if you're looking at it in other contexts, if you're looking at it for yourself, why are you motivated to lose 5 pounds? Or sufficiently motivated to actually lose it, which has been my case for about a year. Find out what you are not valuing or what you need to do to find the value. On Wednesday, I had the unique privilege of talking with a rather, it was about 20 faculty and administrators from your campus here. And I just wanted to share with you one of their ideas. One of them mentioned how she takes great effort to show how everything that they are learning within the classroom applies within their later career choices. So the motivation theorist suggests that you need value, but you also need expectancy. If you don't value it, you can't be motivated, but you also need expectancy. So what is expectancy? It's the belief that you can succeed. Now, we have Henry Ford, who I think captured the essence so elegantly when he said, whether you think you can, think you can't, you're right. So it's important for a person to be motivated to have a high-level expectancy that with effort, they will be able to succeed. Now, this has been the focus of much research. And Martin Covington at the University of California at Berkeley found 4 different expectancy models within students. He found success-oriented students, who of course are our best, most wonderful students, are the students who really do value learning because they've been successful throughout their academic careers and they have no reason to believe that they won't be successful now. Overachievers are the students who have had some difficulty throughout their educational experience, and so they want to succeed, but they succeed by being overachievers. They're the kinds that often pester us for a few more points, or why did they get a low grade. Failure avoiders, of course, want to succeed, but they want to do it by avoiding failure. So just tell me what I need to do. You know, I don't want to take any risks. It has to be very precise. I want to succeed, but I want to succeed by avoiding failure. And then, of course, there's failure accepting. Students who have been so numbed by the educational institution, they have no expectancy that this time will be any different, and they're extremely to motivate. Now, you may not have them here in this institution, but in my 100% open access institution, we really are, as part of our social justice agenda, targeting different populations to try and bring them in and help them be successful. Many of them have failure accepting issues, and it's very, very difficult to motivate them. It's kind of interesting to think about how were you as a student. I know, I'm going to tell you, I was an overachiever because I didn't always function so well in academic environments. Now, for years and years and years and years, I have always sent out an email before I knew anything about the theory to students before the quarter started. I said, thank you for enrolling my class. I'm delighted you are here. For years, thousands of students have taken this course and been successful, and I have every reason to believe you will be successful too. I thought I was just being nice. But now I'm realizing I'm addressing that expectancy component. But now compare this to this. This class is all tough, 50% of you will fail. Now, who is that? And we all know some professors like that. Who is that going to motivate? Maybe the success-oriented students, and if that's all you want, if you're not worried about anybody else, okay. But the rest of them, it's going to cause so much emotional anxiety that it's going to interfere with their success. But I decided to add in something else to talk with you about today, based on my discussion with some of your faculty on Wednesday, and based on the wonderful breakfast that I had this morning hosted by the Guardian Group. Because I am discovering, and some of my professors, and certainly ones in here, are discovering a kind of some new twist on expectancy. It's like we have spent so many years trying to make sure that everybody's esteem was intact, that we're now seeming to get students who are coming into our classrooms that are expecting to succeed without any effort. My parents paid the tuition, I'm breathing, I'm here, so why shouldn't I succeed? This is calling for whole new kinds of research, and I wanted to just share with you one of my own experiences last term. So I'm teaching an honors class, and I've gotten a little bit of fame for a kind of a model that I had developed, which has been so effective. I say I empower students to be architects of their own learning by providing lots of choice and pathways to different learning goals. So I'm telling my honors students this, and they're all just kind of looking at me. I can tell they're not buying it. I'm thinking, what's wrong with this picture? And finally, one student raises a hand, just tell me exactly what I need to do to get an A. I go, oh, well, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you have freedom of choice. They're still just looking at me. So after I left the class, I got an email within about 10 minutes. I opened it up, and it started out, a bunch of us got together after class, which is not what you meant. But they basically said, we don't like your way of thinking. We want you to tell us exactly what we need to do, and we'll do it. Get it on our transcript, and we're done. But I always adapt, which is why I'm still here. And so I decided to make a very clear path for those students who wanted that path. And I sent it out to an email almost immediately after. And I so wanted to address it like this. Dear big babies, this is what you can do if all you want to do is to get the A. So students, some of them are preferring more structure. I think they've been raised to expect that. But somebody suggested they might be the grown-up kids, the helicopter parents. So I'm going to share with you an anecdote I shared this morning, and they seem to like it, so I'm going to share it with you. So I was going through security to get onto the airplane, and I'm living next to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, which is one of the most competitive universities in the country. So this young man, obviously a student, was walking through security, and he had not one, but two parents helping him through the process. So one parent was untying his shoes, and the other parent was petting his head, fixing his hair, and telling him, remember, when you get past security, fill your bottle up with water. And I'm thinking, oh, parents, get a life and let this poor student get his own life. We're propping them up so much. The only way they're going, my mother used to say, the role of a parent is to give your children wings, then kick them out the nest as I kick out my shoes, and let them fly. If we keep propping them up, they have no ways of developing and strengthening their wings. So I wonder if, you just graduated with preschool. You get to wear your own little cap and gown and have a keynote speaker because you made it through preschool. Sorry, folks, I'm towards the end of my career, so I can say these kinds of things. So from theory to practice, what do you do, though, to help students expect that with effort, they will succeed? I am trying more and more to push with effort. I want to tell them, and I have to tell the administrators this, who want me to have all the students succeed, because that's the money. But I want to say, we have to tell them, you, the students, have a right to fail. You have a right to fail, and to come back to college when you're ready for it. But they have to expect that they can succeed, but they have to expect that it's going to take effort. So one of the faculty on Wednesday said one of the things that they did was they tried to make it very clear what the priority of things were to learn, because otherwise it was too easy for students to become overwhelmed. Let's look for just a moment at the intersection between these. So if a student doesn't value the task and doesn't expect to succeed, the predicted response is resistance, rejection, resentment, and anger at being coerced into a perceived totally pointless activity. That's disengagement. If a student doesn't value the task but expects to succeed, they'll evade it, do the minimum, their attention drifts to competing interests. You tell them in a group discussion, talk about this, they know the answer, they know they can talk about it, so what do instead? Talk about the party that they're going to that night. If they value it but don't expect to succeed, and I'm getting more of these students because we are recruiting quite heavily internationally, and we have students who come in who have language issues. They value what they're getting, but they're a little worried about their language issues. They make excuses, pretend to understand, deny their difficulties. I ask them, do you understand? And they say, yes, I understand, but they don't really. So engagement happens when they expect to succeed with effort and value it. So Lee Schulman, who was the former president of the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, says engagement begins with motivation. And we agree on that, right? Pat Cross ultimately said, well, I don't know if it begins with motivation, but she now says motivation is important. But the one thing that I like to remind people of is that if you're talking about motivation as value and expectancy, a product, you know that each individual comes in with different values and different levels of expectancy, especially in our large classes and with all this diversity. So we can't motivate. That's a choice they make themselves. But we can and need to, as our moral responsibility, to provide a context that more of them will find. But I've experienced, and I know seasoned faculty members have experienced, there are some students that come in with such baggage regarding value or expectancy, there's nothing you're going to do that is going to motivate them at this point in their life or maybe ever. So we need ways that they can exit and maybe come back at another time, because it's ultimately their choice. The second component was active learning. Active learning has become an umbrella term for lots of different pedagogies like service learning, collaborative learning, And I have to constantly remind myself, and I know many faculty do this, to not get misled into the thinking that active learning means that they're just being active, right? So you can recognize the fallacy in that of small groups talking to each other. They may not be learning, but they're being active. So active learning is defined in a number of different ways. We want to move it from this to that. But basically, I feel that active learning means that students are taking an active role in connecting new understandings, integrating them into their current understandings and neuronal networks, and applying it in some sort of context. It's important to remember that learning starts with making connections. So the first thing that a brain does is it says, where have I seen anything like that before? And it searches, and then it starts building these, in cognitive psychology, they call it schemata, but it's also just networks. And so learning is preserved networks of connections. And as you move from novice to expert, you develop more and more of these networks of connections, which is why we who are experts in an area can look at something and quickly process it. Whereas a novice, it's so hard. And as teachers, we get frustrated. We say, why don't you understand this? I explained it to you 3 times. They don't have the complex networks upon which to hang information. But this is something else that I changed after this morning's breakfast because I feel so strongly about it. That foundational knowledge has to also be applied. It has to be applied by having students write, speak, solve problems, think critically, work individually, work collaboratively. And the reason for that is that when I was growing up and when many of you were growing up and going to college, knowledge was power. And now please don't get caught up in just the term knowledge. Because knowledge, I could also say information. But so don't worry about that so much. I'm just trying to get a certain concept through here. But this is what it was. You went to universities because that's where all the knowledge was. Last year, I had the privilege of going to your sister campus in Kingston in Jamaica. And I was at the Guardian Group breakfast. And somehow breadfruit came up as a concept. I said, well, what is a breadfruit? And within 2 seconds, somebody from the Guardian Group came up with their smartphone. They said, well, here's a breadfruit. This is what it looks like. This is what it is on a tree. This is how we prepare it. Here's some recipes for it. Everything was right in their cell phone, right in their smartphone. So that kind of information is ubiquitous. And students know that. All they have to do is go to their smartphone. And because it's so available, it's cheap. They see it as cheap. Because it is cheap. All you have to do is go to your smartphone. So what we need to do is to show them how to use it. Because that's priceless. Knowledge is cheap, or information is cheap, but the ability to use it is priceless. What I want to tell my students, and I'm going to go back to telling them now, when they talk about not valuing college, there's no, I'm never going to get a job. I'm only going to be in debt. I want to tell them, somebody's going to have to succeed. Businesses and every sector is searching for good people who can think, who can write, who can solve problems, who are dependable, who are reliable, who know how to work together. There are going to be people who succeed. Why don't you be one of them? And use my classroom as a laboratory to develop the kinds of skills that you're going to need to succeed. In the United States, we have this global learning for the new century, and these are the type of competencies they're saying. We have to help our students learn how to write, learn how to speak, learn how to give presentations, learn how to do mathematics. Interestingly, these cannot be learned passively. You can't learn to write sitting there listening to me talk about writing. Another thing is that they can be learned outside of academia. Street smarts. They can be learned outside of academia. So learning how to use knowledge is our real added value today. That's a terribly huge and deep shift that is so difficult for professors such as myself who have been teaching for a long time in the information delivery to change. What do you do to help students ensure, or to help ensure that your students are active participants in their own learning? that they're not just sitting there listening to your knowledge, but that they are actually applying it. One of the professors in the Wednesday meeting, who also I know is here, because I wanted to talk with him more about it, he says, I start my courses with team-based games. He teaches business course, and it's simulation where immediately students are put into a position where they're making decisions about the technology, about, what, Simon?